There was very low number of sales across the islands. Last month was the big drop off in the number of sales that happened last month. And then in September, we were all the way down to 292 sales, one of the lowest numbers that we've seen as far as the market data goes back, but still very, very low in comparison to for number of closed sales. So still very low on the island of Maui. Hey, what's happening, friends? Market report time. We'll be looking at data from all across the state, hitting every single island, looking at median price, number of homes on the market, and number of sales that are happening each month. And so let's jump right into the data. There was some changes from last month, from the trend that we've been seeing the last couple of months. We normally start on the Big Island, but we're going to start on Kauai this month. And so we're starting from the north side of the state. And on Kauai, median price is right at $1 million. There are 420 active listings, which are just a few more than we had a month ago, and there's 194 under contract. And if we look at the number of sales that are happening month over month, interesting here, we saw a real big drop off in the dollar volume. So this usually tracks market activity, because the more properties that sell, the more dollar volume that goes up. But in this case, there was a big drop off from 116 to 82 million. And that's probably because, Kauai has really high-end properties, and a couple of high-end properties closed in September, but not in October. But if you look at number of sales per month, it's kind of been hovering around that kind of high 50s, low 60s range. And so a few less sales, 62 last month versus 65 the month before, but pretty much stable in terms of the month over month sales on the island of Kauai. And like always, not a ton of variability. We've seen anywhere between 54 and the height was 78 sales. So that's kind of the range where you see Kauai sales happening. So we're going to jump over to the Big Island now. The overall summary on the Big Island, there are 2,248 active listings. This continues to creep up month over month, but still very, very low in comparison to pre-COVID levels when we saw this number above 3,500, normally closer to 4,000. And then currently 662 properties under contract. And this was an interesting thing that we talked about last month, was the big drop off in the number of sales that happened last month. So if we saw, we were kind of climbing back up over the spring, and then it dropped off. And then in September, we were all the way down to 292 sales, one of the lowest numbers that we've seen as far as the market data goes back. And then huge recovery in October, so 380 sales, so almost 100 more sales in October than we saw in September. So that was definitely somewhat of an outlier, because we were kind of tracking along 440, 337, 401, and then we had this big drop off to 292. So that was somewhat of a blip in the data for September. Doesn't look like that's a long-term trend, because we bounced right back and closed 380 in the month of October. And then moving over to Maui, on the island of Maui, median price continues to track upwards. It kind of bounces up and down month over month, but we're at 1.1 million for the median price on Maui. But if you look at a year ago, that median price was 900. So considerably more than it was a year ago, if you look at the average trend line going up. Number of homes for sale. This is interesting. We saw a steady increase in the inventory peaking in August, and now there's been a small decrease. So we're down to 1,018 total properties on the market, down from a high of 1,115 back in August. And so kind of some stabilization there from that big run up from September of last year. We saw that run up of properties in the market going up considerably and steadily until August, and we've seen a little drop off there. And then looking at closed sales, also very low number of closed sales, only 103 in September, but we saw that jump up to 118 in October. So a little bit of a recovery there, but still lower than what we've been seeing over the last few months. But again, Maui, not a ton of closed sales, still sub 200 month over month. And so we got to the high of 180 back in April for the last 6 months, but the high for the last 12 months was 196. So we're still about, half, about 60% of what we saw in the height of the last 12 months for number of closed sales. So still very low on the island of Maui. And then jumping over to Oahu, median price continues to go up in that upward trajectory. We're looking at 720 for the median price. If you look at a year ago, it was 670. So again, median price continues to rise if you take the average over the course of the last 12 months. Same thing for the inventory here, where we saw a tapering off and kind of a plateau of inventory. We saw steadily from basically May of last year, there's been a steady rise in inventory, and we hit a peak of 2954 back in July, and it's kind of been stable right around there, and we're a little bit lower at 2924. So not a huge drop off, but looks like inventory is stabilizing to some extent. We're seeing that across all of the islands, where we saw kind of a big run up of inventory over the last 12 months, and now it's tapering off and holding steady right around whatever that average number is per month on each island. And then number of closed sales, again, we saw this across the state. I talked about this in last month's market report, how there was very low number of sales across the island, 617 on the island of Oahu, but we saw a big jump up to 712 in October. So about 100 unit increase in the number of sales just month over month. So again, September, very, very slow month overall, all across the state, but we're seeing that increase pretty much across the board except for Kauai in the month of October. So a little bit of a bounce back. But overall, what does this all mean for you? At the end of the day, if you're a buyer, it's a very good time to be in the market right now because of all of the uncertainty, the election. We're going to find out real quick here what happens, and I think that's going to create some stability in the market. But interest rates continue to be high. They've actually been ticking up lately, so that's continuing to suppress buyer demand, but lots more inventory than we've seen really over the last 36 months. And so there's a lot more opportunity, a lot more to choose from if you are a buyer. But as always, if you have any questions about any of this specific data or your specific neighborhood or part of the island, you can reach out. We got you covered all across the state. There's a link to book a meeting in the comments below, or you can always email me at dylan@buybigisland.com, and we'd be happy to help you. Thank you guys for watching. This is your October market report. Aloha.